First of all, thanks very much, everybody, for being here at this SEFI at Work session. We're really, really happy in the Engineering Education and Research SIG to be able to introduce and to provide a platform for the best research paper of the SEFI Conference 2025 to be showcased. And the title, as in the chat, is Evolving Gender Dynamics in Teamwork Experiences Among Female Students in PBL Settings, and authors being Sandra, Ireri, Cruz, Moreno, and Shannon from TU Dublin. I won't take much more of times of introductions, but a couple of points for housekeeping. And that is that we will be using the chat for you to send us a whole bunch of things, but please also bear in mind that if you have questions throughout the presentation, use the chat function for that, and we will try to keep an eye on it and then come back to you on time. As you probably now noticed, we are recording this session, so if you don't want to appear in the camera or you want to have a different name, please make sure that you do the adequate changes so that you are not recorded. And that's it from me. Perhaps I should have also said who I am. And I am Esther Ventura Medina from TU Eindhoven, and I am the moderator for this session and co-chair with Tine de Laat, also from KU Leuven, of the Engineering Education Research SIG. So welcome, everybody, and welcome, Sandra and Shannon, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esther, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this SEFI at Work session. This is my first session in SEFI at Work. My name is Sandra Cruz, as Esther said, and I will be conducting this session together with my supervisor, Professor Shannon. We're going to exchange some ideas about the paper, and these ideas are what we think was values about our paper, because of course we didn't. I mean, it was difficult to start this presentation because the topic is what makes research papers stand out, and we didn't do this paper to win. Anyways, come Shannon.
So the paper is reporting a pretty big chunk of Sandra's overall PhD thesis, and we're really honored that it was nominated for awards in 3 categories. And I have to say, this was by 3 separate panels of judges, and it was actually nominated in all the categories for which it was eligible. So me as a supervisor was just on top of the world here, that it was ultimately named the best research paper of the SEFI conference in 2025. So in this paper, Sandra has focused on describing how undergraduate engineering students who were at our university, TU Dublin, experienced problem-based learning and collaborative learning. She used an established framework, and that helped her distill some of the gender dynamics that were embedded in the data that I had collected. Her study of the background study, looking at the methods and the frameworks that she would use, was really extensive, and it is exceedingly well described in her written dissertation. It took her a lot of time and focus to identify the best frameworks to use. Some of the people here today were helpful in that. We'll talk about that later. And those frameworks were very helpful for allowing us to understand our interviewees' experiences and report them effectively.
Yes, thank you. So, as Shannon mentioned, this was part of my PhD research. So I want to start by saying that I acknowledge that many of you have much more experience than I do. And as a PhD candidate, I don't really feel like I have the authority to tell you what makes a research paper stand out.
So instead of focusing solely on the project, I have begged Sandra to present the research project, and she tucked that in. But we're going to use a lot of the session as an opportunity for collective learning.
Yeah, and collective learning is actually part of our research topic. We focus a lot on peer learning, and it happens only through bouncing ideas around with others. So we're going to do that today. We're going to do that a lot today. And we also want to share some reflections of our journey, particularly on the right decisions and design choices and things that worked, and we were joyful about that, and the others that were very challenging. So thank you for joining us today. So this is the session, the structure of the session. We're going to start with a little icebreaker because we want to have this session very dialogue oriented. We're going to start with this icebreaker. Then we're going to do a brief summary of the paper with some initial reflections. And to keep this interactive, we're going to spend some time in small groups to discuss. Then we will create some space to think together about writing decisions and to exchange some ideas. And also, please feel free to share your ideas in the chat at any moment, so we can have a rich conversation. Shannon, I don't know if Shannon mentioned this at the beginning because I lost a little bit my focus, but I'm getting ready for my Viva. So your insights on the work will be very helpful for my preparation because as you can see, I'm a little bit nervous right now. Anyway, let me keep going. So yeah, this is the icebreaker. And we'd like to start with positive thoughts. So in the chat, we'd love you to share what part of writing a research paper do you enjoy the most? Please write just one word or a short phrase. And here you can see some examples in the screen.
So we have answers starting to come in. And of course, Sandra can't see those because she's behind presenter mode in Teams. But Esther and I are going to try to summarize so we can discuss. Some of the things that are coming in are about framing the story and the context of the research, watching that story emerge, the literature review, doing the literature review, and of course, so people like a lot of different types of parts of the project, collaborating with others, that's also what I had put in, writing the methodology, developing research questions. We don't have clear themes here, right, to start out with, clarifying the argument, thinking what can transfer to others. Now we start to have some recurring things. Clarifying the argument and writing the findings section. Oh yeah, that is, again, Jelena also has writing the findings after reviewing the data. Hi Beverly. The methodology, although she doesn't like writing it up very much. I'd have to say that Sandra really actually very much enjoyed the methodology and really struggled with it because I hired her with a certain methodology in mind, and she said, no, that doesn't fit perfectly. So,
you know what? But for me, joy actually comes from realizing how my work is like aligned with others or not really aligned with others, and like having this conversation because I'm a little bit shy in conferences, I must say. When I'm writing papers, I can imagine myself having this conversation with the other authors. A lot of them that are here in SEFI conferences or in this group, and so I really enjoy the literature review section. If you mind, Shannon, shall we?
That's great. Yeah.
Keep going, right? Okay.
I am happy to see that several people now have put in that they like the review process and responding to the reviewers. So that's great to hear.
A lot of clarification and literature review also, Shannon, I think is are probably the top ones.
Oh, good. They were flying in so fast.
Yes. We will go back to these answers in the plenary, I guess. Okay. We now move to briefly describe our paper, and the title, as Esther said, is Evolving Gender Dynamics in Teamwork Experiences Among Female Engineering Students in PBL. So as you see, the paper focuses on lived experiences and power dynamics, and we draw this on longitudinal interviews with women engineering students in Ireland. It is grounded in social phenomenology. The research objective in our paper is to understand the interplay between individual experiences and broader power structures for women students in collaborative learning settings in engineering courses. We developed 2 research questions. The first one is, how do power relations shape teamwork experiences of diverse female students in PDL? And the second one is, how do these experiences evolve across their academic journeys? We used 3 theoretical and conceptual approaches to frame the research. The first one was social phenomenology, then gender at work framework, and intersectionality. So here is what we think is our main contribution. We conceptualized, if you follow this line, we conceptualize lived experience as a continuum of 3 social levels of analysis, and our paper connects these levels rather than treating them separately. So in the circle in yellow with the person, with the image of the person is, you see the micro level. So we explore individual experiences such as participants' behaviors and perceptions in teamwork. Then at the meso level, our paper reframes team practices and pedagogy of group work. And at the macro level, we talk about inclusivity and power in a structural context. So together, so the paper highlights, I think, the circle in the middle, the meso level, which is the intersubjectivity. The intersubjectivity refers to this shared world experienced by individuals and groups that enables mutual understanding in cultural practices. And for us, this was a key concept to understand how women get into engineering as newcomers in a male-dominated field. So we could also see their doubts and their challenges when they were introducing themselves to this field. The methodology, I will come back to this approach later. The methodology, as we have said, we use longitudinal data set. It was based on 41 phenomenological interviews. Those were open conversations that lasted at least 1 hour each one. So it was a lot of narratives and it was very rich. They were conducted with 22 female undergraduate engineering students at TU Dublin. And the interviewed women came from 7 different countries. So again, this makes the data set very, very diverse and rich. And they were talking a lot of very different topics. And now, let me describe the theoretical foundations for the research and the paper. So phenomenology, as you may know, focuses on understanding the structures of experience in everyday life from the first person point of view. However, classical phenomenology falls short when attempting to unveil the connections between lived experiences of a given phenomenon and the underlying power structures that might not be part of the individual's narratives of everyday life, because sometimes we just normalize them or internalize them. So we explore post-structuralism to understand that individuals are positioned in historical contexts that are dominated by power relations. And again, here, I think our contribution was that we were able to combine phenomenology with some sociological lenses. I should say that a more detailed analysis of the theoretical approach was developed in our SEFI paper in the conference for 2024. So this has been a work that has been accumulated for the 4 years that I've been working on my PhD program. We also explored different conceptual tools and we chose the gender at work analytical framework. This approach claimed to be helpful to analyze power relations embedded in institutions and communities. So we tried it with our research. The framework uses 2 dimensions, the individual systemic spectrum that you can see in the vertical arrows, and the informal formal spectrum represented in the horizontal arrows. The combination of these 2 dimensions forms 4 quadrants concurrently. And we use this conceptual tool to understand how power dynamics shape individual experiences. So please see, for example, number 1, the quadrant of rules and policies. It highlights the macro context in which participants are embedded In contrast, in quadrant 4, consciousness and capability, it addresses the internal aspects of the participants' experience. This tool was really helpful to developing a deeper comprehension of collaborative learning and gender dynamics in teamwork that extended beyond the classroom. And this was very important for us because usually when we study team dynamics, we only focus on what is happening right at the moment with the students. But if we open our view and we see that the students also have their own background and their own current life beyond the university, then we can understand why they behave as they do. If they have some caregiving activities or they have financial pressures, other things that are occupying, that they are taking a space in their mind, then we will understand that students also have those pressures on their mind when they are collaborating with others. But because our research questions are focused only on collaborative learning, of course, we kept focus on that. So in this slide, we show the data analysis. So the data analysis consisted in categorizing the participants' narratives into different topics and then locate them into the quadrants. So for example, if you see quadrant 1, participants were talking about a lot of them were in all girls schools at secondary level. And the subjects they were most commonly exposed to were about nursing, beauty, and business, in contrast of all boys and mixed schools. So Shannon, could you help me please here with reading the quotes?
Sure. So, well, you've given us all the quote for number 1. All we were hearing was nurses and beauticians in business during the girls' school. Mm-hmm. And then if we look at the opposite quadrant, the most different quadrant about consciousness and capabilities, we see that when something works in projects, I'm confident, yes, I can do this. So there we're seeing the micro and the macro. And then when we look at the in-between, we have quotes like about the resources that these students are drawing from. So in the second one, we have, I don't have anybody else in my family who's an engineer that I could go to. And for social norms and deep structure. But the problem with these boys is they think girls are always wrong until they realize, oh, okay, she's right.
Yes, so what we do here is after we collect all these narratives and then we try to categorize them and to put the title. So now I added the titles for each category. So for the quadrant number 1, we put uneven access to engineering. In quadrant number 2, we call it support gaps because that was what we found the most. In the third one, we call it team dynamics. And in the fourth one, we talk about redefining identity. After doing the analysis, we reported the key findings for each quadrant, starting from the structural aspects to individual experiences. So in the quadrant number 1, uneven access to engineering, we reported the lack of exposure to technical subjects in all girls' schools. And we described how participants perceived they were at a disadvantage compared to peers from boys' schools. In the second quadrant, support gaps, we found out that only few participants have female engineer role models. And for those with no engineers in their core family, it was harder to access guidance, support, or networks in engineering. In the third quadrant, we reported biases in role distribution as part of the team dynamics. Despite the participants' confidence increase along the program, they kept saying that they have to prove themselves. So they were saying like the stereotypes persisted. And finally, in the quadrant number 4, we titled it Redefining Identity because over the time we saw how participants reshape their identities as competent engineers, earning recognition and credibility. And this also shifted the team dynamics and the position that they took during the group work. So in combination, these 4 quadrants allow us to answer the research questions that aim to understand on the one side how power relations shape participants' experiences in PBL, and the other is the second research question was the evolution of these experiences across the academic journeys of the students, of the participants. So about the conclusions and the implications of our paper, show first that the relevance of studying collaborative learning from a social perspective rather than only individual experiences. The second point was the individual resilience is not enough. If lived learning experiences are the result of social interactions, then focusing on individual resilience as a public policy falls short. And we say so because in another paper, we've analyzed that most of EU-level policies addressing gender gap in STEM fields rely on this strategy. They are most of the time talking about empowering women and increasing their self-confidence, but it's not the only strategy, because as we said, it's also a social intersubjective aspect that we need to address. And the third one, as I was saying, it's a call for structural and institutional interventions that truly promote gender equality in engineering education. Yes, so this is this was the brief explanation of the paper. And we think that the core contribution was not only mention that the women face bias in teamwork, because that is a phenomenon that is already well researched and already known, but it also showed how this dynamic shift along the time, how individual experiences connect to institutional and policy level dynamics, and why focusing on individual resilience is insufficient from a gender policy perspective. We didn't want to describe a case study of gender issues, so we tried to add something new to the conversation from a different approach. Yeah, and we also faced a lot of challenges. I think this slide just point out 3. I think that the hardest one. The first one was to write about gender without essentializing women, and especially because we have a very diverse group of participants, it was difficult to call like a women experience as only one. The second was balancing the richness of data with clarity, and as I said, they were talking a lot of very different subjects, and it was hard to choose between those narratives which were more representative. And the third one was making theory work with the data and note over it. And this was also very tempting for me, because sometimes I get to read a lot of terms, a lot of concepts, and I felt like I wanted to include them because they were very interesting, but sometimes they didn't really add to the conversation. So that was also part of my supervisor's job to stop me and say, Sandra, that's enough. So yeah, I think now it's time to go to have a small conversation, a small groups conversation with you. So Shannon, please.
Great. Well, we're exactly on time now, Sandra. So we should be able to use at least 10 minutes for the small group discussions. And Alex from the SEFI office is going to help us here. We're going to break into groups of 3 to 4 people, depending upon the structure that team's allowing, Alex. When you get into your room, we're going to ask you to nominate one person to report out. We will put in the chat the discussion questions. They're on the next slide, but I'll also paste them in the chat so you can see them when you're in your room. And before you come back in 10 minutes time, if you could prepare one key insight to share with the group, then we'll use that for the debrief.
Yes, and actually, many of the insights you just shared implies that making a paper more distinctive is a long research process, and it's really helpful to share, to exchange ideas with others. So I also want to use those ideas to share this slide with you. What might help a paper stand out from our experience is, of course, as Bill was saying, gather critical feedback at conferences. And here we have some experience, like Shannon and I got a lot of feedback from different people, even Thijs Johansson, that is now here in the group today, Natalie Wynn too. I was saying we got good bits of advice from people who read the written work, especially from my external examiner, Roland Tormy. And he pushed me towards literature on power dynamics and gender and emotions, which was something that I hadn't included at that time. And it really enriched a lot my work. And then I think finally I also realized how important was to trust my own skills. And sometimes we doubt about our skills. And in this case, my sociological background gave me the confidence to seek out and to integrate relevant theoretical and methodological frameworks to the research. I think that it was also very important to break down these terms to be clear for the engineering education research community. And Shannon, of course, was super helpful in doing that, to stop me and say, Sandra, do not use so much jargon, because then it's just difficult and to follow you, and we are not sociologists. So I think it was also very helpful to have that guidance. Before answering the question that you just popped, Esther, I just want to share this slide with you, some closing ideas that we thought were important for us. The first one was that we care about what we were researching. So for me, this objective part of being researcher is not always possible. I will always get very engaged with the stories and with my own personal story. So, but sometimes it's fine, because when you care, you want to find the words to tell it, and you want to engage with complexity of the research, and you want to do justice to the participant voices, because sometimes you feel that they are saying something that you also think or feel. So yeah, we wanted to share this with you, and we wanted also to say that the joy in collaborating is also part of what we have found very helpful to sustain our research. Sorry, because I was a little bit nervous, but I hope you leave this session with these small ideas when you go back to your writing practice. And thank you for sharing your reflections today too. I just want to show you our email addresses in case you want to reach us. And yeah, we still have, I think, very few minutes.
Couple moments.
So let's do this. We have one wrap-up slide about engineering education, the SIG, and the upcoming events. And then it looks like we might have a couple of minutes at the end where people could ask Sandra questions. So Paul's got one, and why don't we go ahead, Esther, and present what's coming up, and then we can wrap up with those questions.
Yeah, let's do that. So the first thing that we are working in the engineering education research SIG with others, of course, is the upcoming May SEFI PhD Summer School, which will take place in Aalborg. And maybe we need to click again on this slide. But it will happen in Aalborg, May 19th to the 22nd. There are still few places available, and we really encourage those of you who have been there and done that before to register again. Those who have not done that and been there before to register. And there is a link. Alex put the link now in the chat. Thank you, Alex. For those who are interested in these last few places, please to use the link. And then, of course, the other thing, and we've just touched upon the importance of SEFI as a conference, as a platform to also get us to discuss a bit more our research. And the upcoming SEFI conference We have, as usual, our doctoral symposium up front to the SEFI conference on the Sunday, the 6th of September. More information to be coming along, but please watch the space. And if you're attending and you're a doctoral candidate, please make sure that you register as well. It's really much fun. It's really good for networking, but also for sharing a bit your ideas and juggling out some of these sometimes doubts and interacting with many others that are really wonderful bunch. Okay, so that's all from me. And then we have a couple of more minutes, I guess, for a bit of questions. Yeah.
I think we'll take Paul's question, but I can answer Celia's question pretty quickly. I think those review panels are using the same criteria that the reviewers use. So if you are serving as a paper reviewer, you would see the criteria. And this year we're going to be doing some data collection around our review process to see if we can compare what our live reviewers produce with what an artificial intelligence system that is trained on the same kind of criteria, what it would generate. So that'll be the first year that we're doing that, and that's through that CLEAR project, that database that we heard about last year at SEFI, that EPFL is part of. So stay tuned for that, because there'll be an opportunity for you to participate and provide data and help us tweak this whole process. So thanks for that point, Celia. And then let's go to Paul's question. Paul's question was, you looked at gender, Sandra. Did you consider the role of culture?
Yeah.
Yes. And it was pretty interesting, because if you remember in the screen with the participants, the countries they were born, some of them are Muslims, are Arabic girls, and they are Muslims, and that it was a huge, it was very relevant for them, because they were not used to work with boys, talk with boys, and it was really interesting. But even for the Irish women, in the sample, in the group, in the participants, it was also very interesting, because a lot of them also attended to all girls school, and they were saying more or less the same, that they were not very used to work with boys, although they were Irish and they were English native speakers, so they have a little advantage over the Muslims girls. But of course, the cultures, the norms were part of the analysis too. I'm not sure in the paper, but of course in the research for my thesis it was. I also read another one. Sandra, do you consider continuing your research to find out how your respondents experience work life working? Oh, that's actually part of another paper that we developed that is called something from teamwork, from teammates to friends. And we also were recommending that if we could track what is happening after teamwork and when they are working already in the industry, if these relationships in teamwork were helpful, or how the impact actually of group work in their professional lives would be very interesting. And I think Shannon is able to get in touch with some of the participants after some years they have been graduated. So it would be very interesting as a follow-up research. Yes.
It's very tempting to go collect more data, but at the same time, there's so much still left. There's one set of data from Poland that we've never even looked at. And Sandra, where we put the blinkers on, was regarding emotions. So I said, hold that for a postdoc. So there's still the emotions aspects to tease out. And right now we're working with a new postdoc, Caitlin Thomas, who's just joined me at TU Dublin. So the three of us are making a team, and we're looking at epistemic justice and epistemic injustice and how that's embedded in the data. So adopting different theoretical frameworks to analyze the same stories can reveal different things. It's like Bill Inesh and I have been using a narrative approach Campbell's Hero's Journey framework to look at the individual stories. And there's just so much already there. So thanks for joining us to hear a little bit about it. It's been a pleasure having you, and please feel free to follow up with Sandra or myself if you've got any more questions for us.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Shannon and Sandra, for such a wonderful session. And of course, everybody for their contributions and their exciting comments and questions. And we hope that it was sincerely a very productive and fruitful time for you on the knowledge that is maybe food time for some. Yeah.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.